Today we're going to talk about the authentic self. What is that? And how does this relate to our sun sign? And of course, I will discuss how we can use shadow work to have a better understanding of what the authentic self really is and how this applies to your natal sun sign. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Sherry. I am a Western tropical astrologer and I specialize in shadow work. However, I do offer regular natal chart readings if you're not interested in shadow work, but also the option of one-on-one shadow work. So let's talk about what it means to be authentic. So, becoming the authentic self is really not about becoming another idea of ourselves, even though lately becoming a new version of oneself and wanting to be more authentic is a new trend that is pretty common now. And I have nothing against this practice, and I certainly did try to be an authentic personality for many years. But once you start to do shadow work, you get a much deeper access to this understanding of yourself. So, what I have realized is that by trying to become something other than what is here and now means that we're not accepting ourselves as we are. And the authentic self is not a new idea we need to become, it is who we are already. But what does that mean, especially if we don't like what we see in ourselves and want to change this? Well, from this inner realization, we can start to make more conscious choices by becoming aware of what we intuitively feel. We can get in touch with our heart center, and the sun rules our heart. And this is why the authentic self is ruled by the sun sign, because who you are exists in your heart. It's your heart that allows you to know or sense what is true to you and what's not. So, over the years, I've practiced shadow work and I have practiced self witnessing. And as I began to witness myself moment by moment, it syncs you up with your heart signals and you start to sense intuitively what the heart wants. And by knowing what your heart wants, you are being guided and you're guided in what feels true and authentic to who you are. So, if we're always in a state of witnessing, we have access to this part of us that most of us are not using because our heart is too closed or numb or guarded. So, from this state of self observation, we're no longer unconscious of the things we once denied in ourselves. We start to notice our devious behavior, our angry outbursts, our desire to blame others without taking some accountability for the part we're playing in the situation we're facing. And shadow work helps us to take accountability in how we're responding to any given situation, even if we believe that we are the victim in the situation. But there's a fine line because in taking accountability, it doesn't mean that we try to change what we feel. We just need to become aware and present to ourselves as we are. To observe ourselves when we're being selfish, jealous, critical, of ourselves and others is not comfortable by any means. And to notice this is to be authentic to what you're feeling. But what we feel doesn't mean it's who we are. And this is where we get confused because we associate what we're feeling and believe that this defines who we are. So if we are angry, we think we're an angry person, when in fact, anger is just an emotion that we are experiencing. So we need to keep remembering that ultimately we are the awareness. And as the awareness, we can become conscious of what we're feeling, identified with in each moment. So, as we become conscious of the automatic rejection or denial of our negative attributes, we ignore and avoid or try to control or change our unpleasant side. But we really just need to face ourselves as we are, since there is no wrong way to feel. Although we love seeing our positive side, we tend to remember the things we approve of, such as when we're being kind or loving or compassionate. And our egos love this, but even in these more pleasant attributes, we still need to notice our hidden motivations for our actions. We can ask ourselves, how genuine is this behavior? If we believe that when we are generous, it makes us a good person, does this really mean that we are generous? Or are we just feeding our conditioned ego identity? These are all things to stay open to exploring, and regardless of what the answer is, the awareness of our hidden agenda is what makes us authentic. To be authentic is not about changing or adjusting ourselves. We witness, then acknowledge, then face what we feel in each moment. We confront the hidden and unconscious aspects of ourselves and bring them into our awareness without judgment. We allow what we have witnessed to come into full view and to recognize our motivations, to see ourselves more clearly. When we know our true motivations, we are being authentic. None of it is easy, or is it an overnight practice. As a matter of fact, it's a lifetime practice, if not lifetimes of continuing to practice. Because as humans, we are imperfect. But by being conscious and aware enough to take accountability for what we have witnessed in ourselves is the real power of being authentic. In other words, we have the innate ability and the inner sovereignty to be aware of ourselves as the awareness. Sit with that truth for a moment. Our awareness of ourself is our self-empowerment, but we're conditioned to overlook this. Although the power of being aware and conscious enough to observe ourselves naturally exists in each of us, it is an effortless realization. And yet it is still very paradoxical because we live in what appears to be a dualistic reality where we experience separation. We start to identify with what's outside of us or what is perceived to be outside of us. And then we lose our sense of awareness. We get engaged with the dynamics and the play of experiencing an external life. So we see everything outside of us and ourselves. And it takes a real commitment and a genuine desire to see that all things live within us, since we are the point of illumination and expression of the self that is consciously experiencing reality from a personal perspective. The sun sign in the natal chart is our point of illumination into our reality. To know this is to know that all things are you. This profound ultimate truth exists within each of us. When we allow ourselves to see ourselves just as we are, without judgment, meaning through a silent mind that is present and aware, as the witnessing presence, then we are seeing things as they are and not as we want them to be. If we are aware as the conscious observer of our own lives, this is where we hold our power. The desire to become something other than what is here and now, including being authentic, is an idea we're striving to become. And this is an illusion. Anything that is not here and now is really an illusion and therefore a figment of our imagination. Stay with that thought and really sense that, because if something does not exist right now, it is merely an idea. It is an illusion. It's a fantasy. Until it's here and now, it is not real. The only thing that's real is right now. And the only thing that we can absolutely have is the here and now. And this is the only time that we can actually be authentic. To be authentic is about acknowledging and facing ourselves in each moment and allowing ourselves to notice what we're thinking and feeling and doing as we go about our daily activities and being aware. Although it sounds simple, it's not easy to do this. It requires a true desire to become aware and face ourselves moment by moment without automatically dismissing the parts of ourselves that we really don't want to see. This is what a real awakening is. It means that we're ready to meet our true and authentic self that exists in each now moment, just as we are. Not in the pretty decorative box that we want to see ourselves, but as we are. Now we can consciously witness the false self as the ego that is identified with its ideas of itself. The false self, which is our ego identity, has captivated all the attention of the personality. And this aspect of the self is always chasing, pursuing, and striving towards the future. And it is never present in the now moment. It can't be because it's an idea. And ideas cannot exist now. They are ideas. When we're curious enough to stay present to witnessing the incessant desire to strive for something that we believe can be found in the next moment or somewhere in the future, we're awakening. The work is to notice this persistent urge to become something else because we think it will make us better. And instead of relaxing into what is here and now, we're in constant pursuit. We can allow ourselves to integrate this persistent urge by simply being present to the internal impulse for more. We tend to express this desire and urge for more, which is an inner yearning that we satisfy through our physical needs. We try to meet this urge in ourselves through distracted, escapist behavior instead of sitting with the feeling. But in truth, we are born into our authentic self, which is the sun sign, before we have become conditioned through the ascendant sign. To rediscover this in ourselves requires self witnessing and self investigation. So, what does that mean? When we awaken, we remember ourselves. We remember that there is really no need to become what we are already. The sun sign, which is our pure or spiritual ego, is the authentic and true self that already exists within us and is our most natural state or way of being before we become identified with our conditioned personality. And the authentic self does not need to be created or pursued, it just needs to be realized. Being authentic is an inner realization and not an external event. Nothing needs to happen to recognize that our genuine self already exists, and nothing needs to be added to our true essence. Yet our conditioned ego identity tells us otherwise. What we really need to work on is exploring our own inner landscape to rediscover all true parts of ourself, since it has been fragmented and distorted by our conditioned programming, which is the ascendant sign. The work is to return to our true state of being, which is our inner presence in each moment. And therefore, this does not require that we try to become it. It's a huge relief when we know this as a direct experience. And to accept all parts of ourselves, even the part of us that is conditioned into being a personality, and then integrate all that we want to deny, allowing all things to exist and pass through us without identifications, is the key. This simple realization is profound. All things in this reality is paradoxical, and therefore we can never pin any one thing down, although we might try. This universe or matrix is mental. Our thoughts are always actively engaged, and we become identified with our thoughts that trigger our emotional reactions. And we make automatic choices in each moment, becoming conscious of the compulsion to identify with our thoughts and feelings is what creates the space for awareness. And I call this witnessing or self witnessing. This is the deepest purpose of shadow work. It allows us to integrate all unacceptable parts of ourselves. And we realize that to be authentic, we do not need to become something else. And I know it's difficult to swallow this, especially since our whole lives is designed around pursuing the next moment. And to accept that the present moment is enough can be challenging for the part of us that is identified with in ideas that we're conditioned to believe. But what if we could just acknowledge what we witness in ourselves and stay present to what we're feeling without judgment? Then maybe we could see a side of ourselves that we have overlooked until now. We can see the constant desire to pursue our ideas of who we think we should become. It's an impulsive desire. The ascendant represents the ego identity's personality, which is created from conditioned beliefs. that stems from our family traditions, culture, among other things. But what if these beliefs have nothing to do with who we are as the authentic self? These are questions we can begin to ask. And if we're not keen enough to employ our own self investigation, we get swept away in believing everything that we think and feel is who we are. Now, for example, if we feel angry, and we automatically identify with our anger, then we immediately assume that our anger is a part of us. However, if we are observing this in ourselves, we might see that anger is only an emotional wave that we feel identified with based on a story we're telling ourselves to support the angry feeling. If we see that we're not our anger, but we are experiencing anger, then we can allow anger to be an authentic feeling that we can express consciously. So, this is not about trying to change or control anger. Instead, we allow ourselves to feel our anger without identifying with the feeling. We simply witness it as an emotional wave that comes and goes. Now, this is a more in-depth process that could take a much longer explanation, but even without further information, we can still experience what I just said directly, which is more valuable than any explanation I can give. So if we're angry, we can become aware of our anger. We can notice what we're feeling while we vent or explode, or if we're able to stay conscious enough, we might also notice what the feeling is feeding inside of us. Is it the desire for revenge? Or is it fear of feeling hurt and we just want to protect ourselves? Notice that a lot of what we're feeling, especially if it's anger, is a self protective mechanism. The difference is that we can be angry and still be conscious of our anger. We can notice who we're blaming and what our story is about, and notice how this is triggering our feelings. Acknowledge and face the anger instead of becoming fully immersed in the anger. Don't just stop here, go deeper. You can notice your thoughts and then witness the repetitive story, which almost always revolves around blame. Stay present to ourselves as we are. And this is actually the most authentic way to be in this world, because it allows us to take accountability for our feelings. And now we have the power to witness how we are automatically behaving. If we are aware of what we're thinking, feeling, and doing, we cannot completely get lost in our bad behavior. If we're present and aware, we have the power to make a higher choice. If we're unconscious, we're lost in our behavior. But if we're conscious, we can choose something different. If we're not just honest, but able to be humble enough to acknowledge and face our weaknesses by taking accountability for what we are feeling, such as anger or jealousy or whatever it is, and then notice how it's really a self protective mechanism that is protecting us from feeling our own hurt or pain or anxiety or fear, then we're able to see our wounded side. We get access to the wounded self, which is the shadow self. In shadow work, we allow what we feel to teach us more about ourselves, and we integrate this as a part of our personality. And from this perspective, we're being authentic in each moment. If we suppress, deny, ignore, or control our feelings, we're trying to become something other than ourselves in that moment. This is a moment by moment practice because our thoughts and feelings are always changing shape. Staying open to our flaws and our weaknesses is how we grow stronger and more authentic to who we are. So, how does this work with astrology? The ascendant sign is how others see us and how we are programmed as a personality based on our immediate surroundings at birth. For example, our background, such as our family, culture, community, race, gender, and so forth, dictate a huge part of how we are groomed into becoming a personality. The country, culture, family, and traditions we are born into will dictate our program beliefs and the expectations we have as a person. Again, this is our ascendant sign. We express ourselves through the archetype of the sign that is on our ascendant. However, if we engage with our world from a more conscious and objective perspective, then the conditioned personality will naturally shift and align itself with the true and authentic self as we slowly heal through our awareness of the emotionally wounded shadow self. The ascendant sign is the personality we show the world, and when aligned with the sun sign, it reveals our authentic self. We can get to the more harmonious states of our ascendant sign combined with our sun sign through our emotional awareness. So, why is emotional awareness important? The short answer is that we are unconscious of how our emotional triggers drive our behavior and choices. It is literally steering our lives in an unconscious direction that is inauthentic to who we are. And unless we become aware through the self witnessing practice, we follow automatic emotional triggers. We unconsciously live at the mercy of our wounded shadow self. Our heart, which is our sun sign, has been overshadowed by the conditioned personality of the ascendant sign. The ego identity is defined by our behavior, but through healing work, we can purify our wounded self. Eventually, as we heal, the heart opens to receive intuitive messages by sensing what we feel and aligning in our higher mind to know our passions and inspirations. As we slowly shed each layer of the false identifications to the conditioned ego, we can get access to the higher expressions of our sun sign. The sun is our core essence, our vitality. It is the prana or spiritual flow to the divine within us. The heart is where we can know unconditional love, discover our true passions and creative expressions, and feel inspired. The sun is our real inspiration for life. The sun rules consciousness. When we are authentic to who we are, we will naturally align our higher self, which is the true and authentic self, with our ascendant sign or with our personality. Who we are as our core essence, meaning who we are as a soul, is revealed through the sun sign. The sun rules the heart and the soul. The sun sign is the heart of the natal chart. It is represented as the king in the sky. Leo rules the sun in astrology and is the king, and the sun is the king in the sky. It's the most consistent luminary body. The sun in the sky is an external representation of our inner illumination. The sun is the core point for consciousness to express itself through us as a unique individual person. The sun is the spiritual ego, the higher self. It's the authentic expressions. It is our passions. It's our creative center. It's our pure intelligence. It's our highest potential. It is our vital life force and our overall health. It is also our inner authority and our self empowerment, and it represents our true mission and purpose. When we live in alignment in the highest expression of ourselves, we're genuinely aligned in pure consciousness, our core essence, which is our sun sign, the authentic self. When we are in search of something to add to ourselves in order to feel complete or become a better version of ourselves, we're working with our ego identity, which is the ascendant sign. But all planets and important points in the natal chart must unite in order for the self to express itself in equanimity. This means that all the planets in the natal chart need to synchronize in order to live in a state of even mindedness. But since this is a dualistic reality that creates separation, then the work is to find the common thread and unite or integrate all things, all aspects of the self or personality. And in this vein, we are authentic. We can only do this moment by moment. Life is always happening moment by moment, and each moment is measured by time that is constantly in motion, just like the sun in the sky. We are the physical representation of the sun or Son of God. we manifest into physical reality through the sun's magnetic field that radiates through our hearts to seemingly appear as an individual person in a material universe. So, our existence as a person comes through the illuminating, magnetic, radiating rays of the sun's light, combined with the electrical vibrational waves of motion to give birth to the sun or the soul. Our existence is derived from the sun's magnetic rays that propagates through a refracted light spectrum of which we can see 7 visible colors that create reality through an electromagnetic frequency vibrational wave experienced as life. Everything revolves around the sun here on Earth. And so our zodiac wheel demonstrates this clearly as the sun puts a spotlight on the sign it moves through to determine the seasons. And the sun also shows us the time of the day based on its location in the sky. The sun, the S-U-N in the sky, the sun, the S-O-N, meaning Jesus, or the soul, which is each of us, are synonymous since it represents the illuminating presence within ourselves that we call consciousness through our hearts, which is what the sun rules in the body. It is the pulse of the universe that radiates the magnetic field called life to express itself into existence as a unique individual soul. The heart is the most vital organ in the body, just as the sun is the most vital luminary body in the sky that we are totally dependent on. Without the heart circulating blood through the body, we cannot sustain life, just as without sunlight, life here on earth cannot be sustained. So the sun is vital, therefore it is our vitality. The heart, which is ruled by the sun, is a central organ in the body. And although we are programmed to close and disregard or ignore the intuitive guidance of our heart, it is what we must learn to open up to and access for living a more authentic life that is aligned in spiritual guidance. From this perspective, we are living our most authentic life. Thank you for joining me today. And if you enjoyed this content, I hope that you'll consider liking and subscribing. It does help my channel to grow. And also, I want to remind you that I do offer natal chart readings. And if you are interested, my information is below this video. Thank you and goodbye.